रामानुजदयापात्रं ज्ञानवैराग्यभूषणं श्रीमद्वेङ्कटनाथार्यं वन्दे वेदान्तदेशिकं लक्ष्मीनाथसमारम्भां नाथयामुनमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्परां यो नित्यमच्युतपदाम्बुजयुग्मरुग्मव्यामोहतस्तदितराणि तृणाय मेने अस्मद्गुरोर्भगवतोऽस्य दयैकसिन्धोः रामानुजस्य चरणौ शरणं प्रपद्ये माता पिता युवतयस्तनया विभूतिः सर्वं यदेव नियमेन मदन्वयानाम् आद्यस्य नः कुलपतेर्वकुलाभिरामं श्रीमत्तदङ्घ्रियुगलं प्रणमामि मूर्धना भूतं सरश्च महदाह्वय भट्टनाथ श्रीभक्तिसारकुलशेखरयुगिवाहान् भक्ताङ्घ्रिरेणुपरकाल यतीन्द्रमिश्रान् श्रीमत्पराङ्कुशमुनिं प्रणतोऽस्मि नित्यं कूजन्तं राम रामेति मधुरं मधुराक्षरम् आरुह्य कविता शाखां वन्दे वाल्मीकिकोकिलं वाल्मीकिर्मुनिसिंहस्य कविता वनचारिणः शृण्वन् रामकथानादं कोनयादि परां गतिं वेदवेद्ये परे पुंसि जाते दशरथात्मजे वेदः प्राचेतसादासीत् साक्षात् रामायणात्मना अञ्जनानन्दनं वीरं जानकी शोकनाशनं कपीशम् अक्षहन्तारं वन्दे लङ्काभयङ्करं मनोजवं मारुततुल्यवेगं जितेन्द्रियं बुद्धिमतां वरिष्ठं वातात्मजं वानरयूथमुख्यं श्रीरामदूतं शिरसा नमामि आञ्जनेयमदिपाठलाननं काञ्चनाद्रिकमनीयविग्रहं पारिजाततरुमूलवासिनं भावयामि पवमाननन्दनं यत्र यत्र रघुनाथकीर्तनं तत्र तत्र कृतमस्तकाञ्जलिं बाष्पवारि परिपूर्णलोचनं मारुतिं नमत राक्षसान्तकम्. A very good evening to the gathering here. Extremely delighted to be in the capital city of Denmark, and this happens to be the last venue of my European tour of rendering discourses on various topics that concern Sanatana Dharma and the ancient civilization. The topic chosen for the day is the couplehood that we see between two prominent characters of one of the world's oldest known epics. Well, we have the other epic from the Indian civilization, which is Sri Mahabharatam, which houses 125,000 verses. To just be of a benchmark, it is 64% longer than the Paradise Lost and 21% longer than the Iliad and the Odyssey put together. So, with 125,000 verses, we still have 10 scholars in remotest parts of India who have memorized all the 125,000 verses. So, we have had people who have learnt the quintessence of Mahabharata. On the other hand, Ramayana is probably not even 25% of the enormity of Mahabharata. It houses 24,000 verses, close to 24,000 verses. And it is regarded as one of the world's oldest epics. And in this, we have two prominent characters. One, Sri Rama, and the other, who is Seeta. So the couplehood that is seen between the two is going to be the topic of our discourse and discussion today. I call it discussion because at the end of the lecture, probably we can have a very short duration dedicated to a question and answer session where you can ask questions pertaining to this topic or any topic concerning the civilization and the culture, and if I have answers to it and I can source them confidently, I would state. If I don't know, it will be a clear no. Because while I render corporate lectures in the North America and in Europe, a question that is often asked by the non-Indians is, why do Indians never have the habit of saying no? So it's bred in the Indian culture that when Rama was asked to go to the forest and it was plan B and not plan A where he was asked to become the king, he still refused to not ask the attorney to address his father. He still said, I will go to the forest. So much so, the habit of saying yes is never will be saying no. Parashurama, despite knowing that he had to guillotine his mother's head, He never said a no to his father Jamadagni. So it is bred in the culture. I keep telling the non-Indians that yes, we are moving with the Western world because of the work culture that we have today. Give us a few more years and we'll say a better no. So it takes little time to break a 10,000-year-old civilization of saying yes. So we'll have a question and answer session. Now the topic has to begin somewhere. Valmiki is often venerated as the foremost of the Sanskrit poets. But what makes him astoundingly beautiful and marvelous is the very fact that he has tried to report the happenings of Ramayana as is. Had his thought been to project or create a marvelous person out of Rama, he could have just skipped those sections which say about him killing Vali, about him asking his wife Seeta to undergo the test of fire called Agni Pariksha, which is still commemorated in a small hamlet in Lanka called Divurum. So, he could have just avoided the portion or probably control X'd the portion that speaks about Rama asking his pregnant wife to go on an exile to the forest all alone. He didn't do that because he was a reporter. So traditionally people in journalism are meant to truly report, and that's what we have had journalism in Indian journalism in the past. So we had Valmiki who reported incidents and events as is. So Valmiki's Ramayana holds authenticity just by the way of its presentation. Whereas Puranas are, though they are accorded a very holy status, they are accorded one step below the Itihasas like Ramayana and Mahabharata because they have come to us through various people. It is not a direct report. Pura in Sanskritam means something which is very old. Navam in Sanskrit means something which is indicative of the number 9 as well as new. The word for the person who tries to see something new in everything is Naveen. Right? So Nava means new. Kushika Sutta Kathita Vidita Nava Vividha Katha tells Vedanta Deshika. So Pura is old, Nava is new. That which may seem old yet will be adopted in the new and the contemporary style is called Pura Api Navam Puranam. So Itihasam Itiha Asa. Thus, as it has happened, it has been reported. So Ramayana is a direct report. Though it houses lesser number of verses than Mahabharata, it holds prominence for the very reason that it tries to convey the life history of one person in an unambiguous fashion. For example, if you look at Mahabharata, though Vyasa had meant to treat it as a work that will talk more about Krishna, it ended up talking about Shantanu's affair with Ganga, then his marriage with another lady called Satyavati, then him having children, those children of which one was Devavrata, leading and promising to have a life of celibacy. Then there were about 2 characters, Chitrangada, Vichitravirya marrying Ambika and Ambalika, then Ambika and Ambalika having children with Krishna Dvaipayana who's Vyasa, and it also talks about Krishna. So Krishna becomes a casualty where he had to be a protagonist, whereas in Ramayana the protagonist is Rama and the life history is about one person, so it holds more prominence than Mahabharata in this aspect. It holds prominence than Puranas in most aspect. That is why probably even in Indonesia, which is an archipelago nation of 17,000 islands, in Bali you still have the traditional dance called the Kechak dance, which is performed every day. Probably besides the versions of Ramayana in Sanskrit, the regional transcreation to Ramayana which comes in India, like Goswami Tulsidasa's Ramacharita in Hindi, Krittivasa's Ramayana in the Bengali language, Kuvempu's Ramayana in Kannada, Ranganatha Ramayanamu in Telugu, Tunjattu Ramanuja Edutachans Malayalam in Malayalam, Bhanubhaktacharya's Ramayanam in Nepali, where Kalidasa's Raghuvamsham in Sanskrit, with so many versions around. Probably the earliest regional transcreation known in India of Ramayanam is the Tamil Ramayanam called Kamba Ramayanam, which comes to about the 9th century. But if there is one Ramayana that predates Kamba Ramayana, it is the Kakavin Ramayana of the Javanese island. So the Javanese Ramayana is older to the Indian Ramayana. So it talks about the prominence that the Southeast Asian countries have attached to this beautiful scripture. One of the world's largest non-functioning Hindu temples is the one that you see in Siam Reap, which is called Angkor Wat, constructed by Suryavarman II 950 years before. If you go see the 4 panels, there is one panel of 650 meters dedicated to the entire Ramayana. So be it arts, be it literature or architecture, Ramayana is there everywhere. Incidentally, a week back we had the recent king of Thailand being coronated. And the titles to the kings of Thailand is Rama. And verses of Valmiki Ramayana and Kamba Ramayana is recited even today during the coronation ceremony. So, Southeast Asian countries have the impact of Ramayana. You'll be surprised. A lot of theologists and even people who work on linguistics state, in Ramayana, incidentally, when we come across Rama hearing to many anecdotes from Vishwamitra himself, Vishwamitra talks about a king called Sagara Chakravarti, who was one of the ancestors to King Rama. So while Sagara performed the horse sacrifice, which is called as Ashwamedham, the sacrificial horse was abducted by Indra, one of the most prominent kings, for doing things that ought not to be done. Yet, since he enjoyed the political clout, he could get rid of any of these FIRs that were found in the file charge in any of the police stations. So this Indra apparently happened to abduct the horse, and the sons of Sagara Chakravarti, who dug earth, since they couldn't find above, they thought somebody must have had an underground passage. They happened to dig so much so that they reached another part of this world, and that part of the world incidentally had the hermitage of a rishi called as Kapila. In Vishnu Sahasranamam we get these words, Maharishi Kapilacharya Kritagyo Medhini Patihi. So Kapilacharya's ashramam was found, where to the staff post was attached this horse. So the sons thought Kapila might have stolen. So they looked at him, and in turn he looked at them, and they turned into a heap of ashes. So they saw the horse, they turned into ashes, and they saw Kapila. So this Kapilaranyam is what a lot of theologists say is currently called California. And the place where the horse was tied is a beautiful island in California called the Horse Island. And the place where they were turned into a heap of ashes is called Ash Island. So you find all these 3 places, though they could not be corroborated by sources such as carbon dating, because you don't have an authentic evidence of material found in front of you. Literature supports words such as this that could be derived. Now, the topic chosen for the discussion is Rama and Sita's couplehood. So even before I could elucidate on the topic, I thought I could instill the foundation of what kind of a scripture that we are going to speak today. So it could be spoken in a small room, but the enormity of the content, that flows through the story is of very, very high significance. Now when we look at Ramayana, Dasharatha is seen as one of those monarchs who is said to have had a daughter called Shanta. Later he wanted sons. Hindi में बोलते हैं बेटी बचाओ बेटी पढ़ाओ तो हो गया, अभी तो चाहिए बेटा. तो he performed Ashwamedham, and as a complementary portion to the yagam he performed Putra Kama Ishti. Ishti in Sanskrit is a small portion that you perform from Atharvana Vedam. So if you desire a son, Kama, Putra. Putra Kama is the desire for a son. So it becomes Putra Kama Ishti, Putra Kama Ishti. So Narayana Bhattadri brings the quintessence of this in a verse. Girvanair arthyamano dashamukha nidhanam kosalesh vrishya shunge putriyam ishtimishtva dadushu dasharatekshma bhruto payasagryam tad bhutva tad purandhishva pitrishu susamam jata garbhasu jato ramastvam lakshmanena swayamata bharatenapi shatrughna namna. So we have had this yagam which was performed. Then there came a Yajna Purusha who gave the payasam. And that is how we had the distribution amongst his 3 principal wives. He had many other wives for political reasons. He had 350 wives is what Ramayana says in Ayodhya Kandam. We are not concerned about how he married so many, how the women were ready to marry a man who did not treat relationship as one-to-one and was ready to go for a many-to-one function as in a set theory. So these questions should be left to both the partners to answer. As of now, we have 350 partners to one king called Dasharatha. The women managing him, the women managing the co-wives, him managing his plenty of wives is of course a topic of separate dissertation which any person who is interested in research could take upon. But now since we have very limited time, let's restrict our scope only to the fact that we have only 3 names that concern us, which is Kaushalya, Kaikeyi and Sumitra. Kaushalya is the legitimate wife, so she comes as the first name. But we do not know if Kaikeyi and Sumitra come in this order or Sumitra and Kaikeyi, because in various places we have Sumitra being referred to as Madhyama Amba, the middle one, whereas in certain places we have Kaikeyi being referred to as Madhyama Amba, which is the middle one. In either case, there were the 3 wives that we need to focus on in Ramayana. So the payasam was distributed in the ratio of 50:25:12.5:12.5. Valmiki is very clear about the distribution as well. Because 100/3 is a non-terminating decimal in maths, 33.33. So to get the number right in numerical analysis, it is called as making a non-terminating decimal, a terminating decimal by making 33.33 as 33.34. So then 33.34 plus 33.33 plus 33.33 makes it 100. So you put a hyphen on the number. Nevertheless, so 100/3 is just not possible. So he ensured that he was legitimate in this. So he gave 50% to Kaushalya, Ardham. In Sanskrit, there are certain words that you deploy in 2 genders. Most words come in 1 gender. For example, Akaranta Vachaka Shabdanam Anyehi api Strilingaha. Uma, Rama, Geeta, Lavanya, Somya, Geeta, Lata, Akaranta Shabdanam Strilingaha. Akaha. For example, if you say Ramaha, Krishnaha, Kalkihi, Govindaha, Purushottamaha, is Pullingaha. So if you have im, then it becomes Napumsakalingam. Phalam, Pushpam, Toyam. They are all Napumsakalinga Vachaka Shabdam. But there are certain words in Sanskrit, nouns, which come in both genders. Padmaha, Padmam. Ardhaha, Ardham. So you can use in 2. In that case, Panini, the grammarian, says you cannot deploy the same meaning to a word appearing in 2 genders. For example, Ardham is half. Ardhaha is also half in the common parlance. No. Ardham is slightly less than half and Ardhaha is slightly more than half. So we will have to deploy the sounds also very carefully. So Ardhad Ardham, half of half was given to Sumitra. Then 12.5 was given to Kaikeyi, and the remaining 12.5 Anuchintya Sumitraye Punareva Mahamatihi. Then you had the sons who were born. Payasake Anusarile to prem badte gayo, tells the Nepali poet Bhanu Bhaktacharya. So they had a wonderful brotherhood, fraternity that the brothers enjoyed. Now Rama is at the age of 12. You'll be surprised. I just changed emotions and the events in a second. I said he was born, and the next line I said he was at the age of 12. So to a normal speaker, I should at least be able to tell 1 or 2 incidents of his boyhood and then arrive at 12. Why did I just choose to make such a transformation? Is Rama had a very uneventful boyhood. He was so obedient to his parents that he had nothing memorable to cherish or even tell others. Whereas in Krishnavataram, you have everything within the age of 12. He lifted the mountain, he played with the girls, he danced on the snake, he killed a horde of demons and demonesses, and then he stole butter, he lied as much as possible, he killed his own uncle, and then by then he was 12. And Rama was 12, nothing eventful, because he was obedient to his parents. It's for this reason that his father was super worried that his son was not married then, because being obedient to parents is also one of the disqualifications to not getting married. So here the father was worried as to why is my son not married. That is when Vishwamitra barges in, tells Valmiki, Darakriyam prati iti chintayamasa. Darakriyam prati means how will I get my son married? Nevertheless, Vishwamitra came. So Rama, till now, till the age of 12, is seen as a person who's obedient to his parents, but you don't see the halo or the glory around him because the topic is such. He didn't have a Sita in his life. Because in Sanatana Dharma, we lay a lot of stress in the 4 stages that a normal or an average human being has to undergo. So we have the Brahmacharya Ashramam, where supposedly we think that the boy or the girl is unmarried and leads that phase. It's still an imagination and an assumption. So that's Brahmacharyam. Then comes the second phase where the girl or the boy marry a life partner. So incidentally, the man is called the husband, the lady is called the better half. You can't say he's half and I am the better half. It doesn't go that way. But in half, essentially in mathematics, you don't come across this concept of 0.5, 0.5. Oh, this 0.5 is better than the other 0.5. But in English, we often say better half. So probably this was one of the topics that my friend and I chose to discuss while I was at Pilani doing my engineering, because while I thought that engineering is not going to help me get salvation, I thought at least seek better means for salvation. So while we were thinking as to why this often repeated cliched phrase called better half, then we understood in numerical analysis 0.48 is approximated to, say something, 0.5. Okay. 0.52 is approximated to 0.5. But what is the difference between 0.52 and 0.48? 0.04. Correct? When you minus 0.52 minus 0.48, it is 0.04. So there's still a difference of 0.4, but both were approximated to 0.5. So the one, which is 0.52, has come 2 steps down to reach 0.5. Whereas 0.48 has climbed 2 steps to reach 0.5. So the girl comes 2 steps down to marry the man, so she's the better half. So this was the conclusion that we had. Because Sanatana Dharma is very clear when it states that in the man and the woman, after marriage, the woman gets half of the punyam of the man, whereas the man gets half of the papam of the girl. This is what Apastamba, the Maharishi, tells in Dharma Sutram. This is not my assumption. He tells, whereas the vice versa is not true. Her punyam half will not go to the man. Her papam half will not come to the man. So it's always this way. Now, Sita's position in Ramayana is very, very important. Though largely we have to agree upon the fact that though the scriptures may accord equal status to a woman, the society and the civilization has for a very long time been male dominated. So it is for this reason, even the work is called Ramayana. Incidentally, Valmiki mentions in one of the verses, Sitayas charitam mahadu paulastya vadham kritva. I should have actually called it Sitayanam and not Ramayanam. Because if at all Sita was not imprisoned, there will be no Ramayana. Why will we deal with a story which is spiceless? Rama went to the forest. After 14 years, he came back. It will be one of the vacations that we take. So I wouldn't be sitting here coming miles away in Lufthansa and wanting to tell you that he went to the forest and then he came back. There's so much of spice, there's so much of value only because Sita was abducted. So she had to languish in the jail of Lanka just for ensuring that the demoniac forces are annihilated. Now, while Vishwamitra could sense that Rama's glory will be multiplied or glorified only if he marries Sita, he came to the court of Dasharatha and said that my sacrifices and my daily oblations have been hindered by the demons. So I would seek your intervention. Dasharatha was a king who would promise in haste and repent in leisure. So that may happen even with us. We may have made a hasty decision of coming to the lecture and we may be repenting it later. So, but you're caught, the doors are closed. So, we had Vishwamitra who said, send your son with me. You've promised, send your son with me. Dasharatha was a lot hesitant because Rama was the apple to his eyes. See, when a child is born to the parents after a very, very long time, when they thought that they were childless and then they had a child, the child gets a lot pampered and gets a special status. So Rama was one such. Nevertheless, support to Vishwamitra came from an unexpected quarter, which was Vasishtha supporting his decision. Imagine Rahul telling Namo. Something like that. So both of them, Vasishtha said, see, it's high time that you send your son on an internship. In its true sense. Because probably I can relate to it. When we did internship in India, it would be in my father's own company. I can stay at home and my father will sign the certificate and give. So this useful was my internship. But here it was meant to be a useful internship. So he was taken to the forest. He could kill Tataka. Dinakaranvayatilakam Divyagadhi Suta Savana Vanarachita Subahu Mukhavadham Ahalya Pavanam Anaghamisha Chapabhangam Janakasuta Pranesham Ghanakupita Bhagurama Garbharamita Sakedam Bhavayami Raghuramam. Swati Tirunal, the erstwhile king of Travancore, which is Thiruvananthapuram, has composed this beautiful medley on Ramayana in Sanskrit. In those days, you had educated people who will become kings and ministers. So, education was one of the primary qualifications to rule. Might things change over a period of time? We had Rama who annihilated a demoness called Tataka. Kamban, the Tamil poet, tells, Solluvakkum kadiyavega chudusaram kariyasemmal alluvakkum nirattinal mel vidudalum adu vairakkunjin kalluvakkum nenjir thangadu appuram kalendru kalla pullarku nallor sonna porul ena pogittanre. So he killed Tataka. He protected the sacrifice of Vishwamitra for 6 nights. And then he gave emancipation to a lady called Ahalya. This Ahalya occupies a very important role in our talk today. Rama had a vow in him. The vow was, if something good has to happen to me, if I am destined for something good in my life, that good should happen to somebody else through me first and then to me. For example, I cook food. I will ensure that somebody has it first. I serve this to somebody first and then take. It could be for a selfish reason that I treat him as a guinea pig. Let me see about his survival rates after the food consumption. But if I'm quite confident of my cooking skills, probably I will feed him first and then do. It's a very Indian tradition again. So when I have to deliver corporate lectures to the Western world, I keep telling. In India, for a very long time, we have never had this habit of informing the host that I'm coming. That's a very, very Western concept that is now crept into India as well, which could be right for a variety of reasons. In those days, we never had this, and especially asking one's own parents that I'm going to come, you take your parents for granted. Even if they have an important appointment with the doctor, we'll say, well, you can still suffer of this disease, but let me come to your house. So we can even become ruthless, but we say that we don't need the guest to inform us. We have to go uninformed. That's why you call him Atithi. He comes without the Tithi informed. Tithi is the day. The moment I inform the Tithi and go, I'm coming on this particular day, I'm not an Atithi, I'm still a Tithi. Atithi is the one who doesn't come informed. So we've had this concept of having an Atithi. So it was very new for the Indian culture and civilization to accept the Western thought that you could call the person and come, Well, things change. We have to adopt a lot of changes because we have not a closed market now. We are an open market. And with urbanization, industrialization, and all forms of digital world coming in, we'll have to open our borders and our thoughts as well. So what is wrong and what is not wrong is something that I or you cannot decide. The society, and over a period of time, things change naturally and automatically. Here Rama thought, even before I am coronated, even before a Pattabhishekam happens to me, I should ensure that the Pattabhishekam of Vibhishana and Sugriva is done. So before a good event such as coronation happened to him, he ensured that the coronation of Sugriva and Vibhishana was done. Likewise, even before he could get in communion with his prospect wife Sita, he wanted to bring a separated couple together, who is Ahalya and Gautama. So we have this past of a lady who was of immaculate beauty. Her name was Ahalya. Ahalya means one who has a flawless beauty, blemishless. Halyatvam in Sanskrit means a flaw. Ahalyatvam means blemishless, flawless. She was married to a rishi called Gautama. Indra was witness to it. When there is the word Indra, you will always have something cheesy and slimy there. So he wanted to have a relationship with this woman. So he disguised as the lady's husband and ensured that the man of the house was out. Meanwhile, he got together with Ahalya. Ahalya sensed with the embrace that this is not my husband, this is somebody else. Yet, she succumbed to the pressure because she thought, if the most powerful of the men, the political world, is coming to me, why say no? So she succumbed to his pressure and had a relationship, while the real husband came and found that it was the man who had barged in. He cursed that you will be a man of 1,000 eyes, which could be the body filled with eyes, or incidentally, in the Indian parlance, a smallpox or a chickenpox is also treated where the body is seen with many pustules, where each pustule is treated as an eye. So he could have been injected or cursed of that particular virus. That could also be a possibility, because in poetry, the poet is meant to exaggerate and give a simile. They are not meant to create medical and patents and research papers there. They won't tell you which virus was injected at what time. So they'll say it seemed as if he had 1,000 eyes, which could be an ailment. And he said, since you have acted so ruthlessly, you will be as petrified as a stone. So he cursed Ahalya to be a stone. That's when Rama comes and feels, when Vishwamitra is taking me to the court of Janaka, why don't I bring a separated couple together? So as he walks, Vedanta Deshika tells that the dust from the holy sandals of the Lord, whenever we listen to stories, we feel that Rama's foot gave emancipation to the stone. That may be logically incorrect, because Rama walked with his footwear. And in most cases, even for the person whose pituitary gland has overfunctioned, who has got long feet, the footwear will still be slightly more longer than the foot. So Rama would have not deliberately stood at one point, taken his foot out of the footwear and then placed his foot on the stone. Then he knows what is going to happen and he cannot claim himself to be natural. He'll be supernatural then. Whereas most poets say that. They say, Shri Rama Padamani Kripa Chalune Chittani Kirave Dharini Shilayai Tapamu Talaga, tells Tyagaraja in Telugu. So he tells that it is Rama's feet which gave emancipation. But probably most poets had a 2D canvas. So Vedanta Deshika, a poet extraordinaire, a consummate dramatist, a sagacious dietitian, a polyglot, a mathematician, a preceptor par excellence, he says in one of his works, Namastasmai kasmai chana bhavatu nishkinchana jana Swayam Raksha Diksha Swayam Adhika Samindhana Yashase Suradhisha Svairakshana Kupita Shapa Yudhavadu Dushatta Durjata Prashamana Padambuja Rajase. It is neither the Lord's foot nor his footwear that gave emancipation. The dust on earth that had contact with Rama's footwear flew and fell on the stone, and that gave emancipation. So that will be more realistic on the top view. In AutoCAD, which is one of the softwares in engineering graphics, you see from the top view. Most of them had a side view. So that's not consummate enough to create a 3D object. So he brought Ahalya and Gautama and said, Gautama, forgive her. If there is this concept of a human committing errors, then there should also be emancipation by forgiving that person. So forgive him, forgive her. This is in sheer contrast to a book in the colonial period. I don't know how many of you must have heard of this. Tess of the D'Urberville. Have you heard of this? This is a beautiful work of English literature, The Tess of the D'Urberville by Thomas Hardy. So Thomas Hardy in Tess of the D'Urberville talks about a farmland owned by the peasants, owned by the landlords, which was worked upon by the peasants. The landlords were filthy rich, so naturally they did not want the son of that house to undergo a lot of pain. So the son was called D'Urberville. So, and he was arrogant to the core, absolutely a personification of bad character and behavior. In the absence of his parents, he physically assaults and molests a poor girl, the daughter to the peasants, who was called Tess. This Tess is a poor girl who tries resisting his physical assault attempt. Despite that, he wins over her. Now, when the judgment was to come, the judge says, it is the girl's mistake of not putting the entire power to resist him, and it's not his mistake. So when he did the mistake knowingly and she tried to resist him, the blame was thrown on her. Whereas in Ramayana, while Ahalya completely knew that it was Indra and succumbed to the pressure, yet Rama tells, forgive her. So he grows multi-steps times more than the magnanimity of Thomas Hardy in the Tess of the D'Urberville, because it comes in the Indian thought that to some extent purity of the body is important. Beyond that, it is the purity of Atma. What is Atma in English?
Soul.
Soul. But what is soul? Atma. So, what is the definition of soul? I don't know. Soul is something which is timeless. No, timeless is a characteristic feature of the soul. But what is soul? Define soul.
There is no part of the God.
There is no answer for soul.
It's a part of the God.
It's part of the God. But is this the meaning what Sriman Webster's in the dictionary states? It's an English word. Check the Merriam's dictionary, the Webster's dictionary, you will find a different meaning for soul. We are throwing the meaning of whatever we have said from the Indian parlance. Because in Sanskritam, it is referred to as Atma. What is Atma? Apnoti iti Atma is the etymological derivation for the word Atma. That which attains, what it wishes to attain is called Atma. If you read Paulo Coelho's The Alchemist, he was a Portugal writer, then you have the English translation. He says, when you aspire for something truly, the world will conspire to do that. So that is precisely the definition of Atma. Vedam tells, Brahmavik apnoti param. If Atma thinks that it has to get moksha, it will get. Because that which attains what it wishes to attain is Atma. So Atma is a superior definition, and the physical characteristics of Atma, Vedam tells, it is 1 by 100 by 100 by 100 of a single strand of hair of a cow's tail. Shatadha, shatadha, shatadha iti bhavattu. So if you take a single strand of the cow's tail, Don't do such experiments. I'm just saying on the Vedic parlance, it says take the single strand, chop it into 100, then take one part, make it into 100, then take one part, make it into 100. You get one part, the size of it is Atma size. So there's a physical characteristic. Then you have some other characteristics like Satyatvam, Jnanatvam. Then you've got that to be the personification of quintessential and unadulterated knowledge. Then you see it as that which attains what it wishes to attain. So this is the entire definition of Atma. Now if you go to soul, soul is presence in a dictionary style. So it is some presence. Soul is not the Atma, because in Sanatana Dharma parlance, Atma goes body after body. And it has got an unattached account called as karma. It is a very, very complicated concept. And if we have to bring that to soul, it is very tough. So the best way to retain Atma in English discourses is to keep the word Atma. Not make, because there are certain Sanskrit non-translatables. You cannot translate. So you should leave them that way. For example, the Western world has started using the word mantra. This is the mantra. What is mantra? What is mantra? Mantram trayate. So when you manaha, now when you start from the heart, that which happens to protect it only if it is sacrosanct. Mantram yatnena gopayet. You should try keeping the mantra as a secret. The moment it comes out in mic, then it becomes sadasyam. Mantra should never be recited openly. For example, Gayatri is often treated as...
That meaning, mantra is, Jnana Shakti is Atma given there.
No, see, in Sanskrit, we go by the etymological derivation. It's called Vigraha Vakyam. Let's take for the word Dvijaha. What does Dvijaha mean? Twice born. So this is the exact definition for Dvijaha, because Jakaram in Sanskrit in Amarakosham indicates birth. So you have Janma, Jani, Janani. These are all words that tell birth. The one who has given birth, who is mother, the cycle of birth and death, which is Ja. For example, the Lord is called Ajaha. Ajaha Durmarshanaha Shasta. Ajaha means the one who is unborn. So Ja indicates birth. Dvijaha means that which is born twice. This is the meaning. Now you can relate it to anything which is twice born. For example, if you take teeth, the tooth comes as a milk teeth and then the permanent teeth. So Vedanta Deshika tells when Lord Krishna was born, Dvija Chandra Chandrika Vaikshata, with the whiteness, the glisten from his 2 rows of 32 new teeth of the newborn child, Devaki could sense where Krishna was. So teeth, the word for teeth is Dvijaha there. Now if you take another meaning to it, the same meaning, another object, then birds become Dvijaha. Because they are oviparous in nature. From the mother they come as the egg. From the egg it comes as a chick. So there's a 2-stage process. Likewise, mantram in Sanskrit means that which is to be protected. And when you protect that, it will protect you. So that is mantram. It should not be recited in the open. Likewise, here we had Ahalya, who was being brought together with Gautama under the guidance of Lord Rama, who said there has to be forgiveness from your side, because Karuna Kakutstha tells Vedanta Deshika in one of the hymns, Ichhamina Viharakachava Mahaputrin Yadricha Harehe Rakshavaamana Rosharama Karuna Kakutstha Elahalin. If there is one USP to Ramayana or Ramavataram, it is only the incessant flow of mercy, which is in sheer contrast to Shylock, who asked a pound of flesh closest to the heart without a drop of blood. But here there is this quality of mercy that flows from the heart of Rama. So he said both of you have to get together. So in Rama and Sita's Dampatyam, couplehood, we need to see that Rama ensured that he did something good before something good happened to him. Now he reaches Mithila. Now in Valmiki's Ramayana, we don't have any instance of Rama and Sita meeting prior to the marriage. But in most regional transcreations of Ramayana, we come across the poets who mention of instances where Rama and Sita could have met. One such very prominent instance, what the Tamil poet Kamban states, is where Rama was walking by the cross street, Sita was playing with her friends in the courtyard, and it had a low hanging balcony like the gazebo. She came closer to pick the ball. While she saw that somebody was walking by the street, she looked down, and Rama was feeling that somebody is looking at him. He looked up, both their eyes met. And this is how Kamban puts a very beautiful verse that talks about the romance between the two. Ennalum nalathinal inayal ninduri kannudu kanninai kavvi ondrai ondru unnavum nilaiperada unarvum ondrida annarum nokkinan avalum nokkinal. Both of their eyes met. So to indicate that they could see each other, look at each other much before the marriage could happen. This could be treated as one of those events where there was a minimal courtship period between the two, if not between the two, at least between their eyes. But Apastamba Maharshi, one of the Sutrakaras for Yajurvedam, we have this concept of giving a Vedic introduction to the opposite person in Sanatana Dharma. If at all we have undergone the thread ceremony, then we have this Vedic intro. It's called Abhivadaye. So, I salute. While you have saluted, I too salute you. So, it's a reciprocation. That is when you try telling in which clan or which lineage of Maharishi you have come. So, if at all you belong to the Gotra of Srivatsam, is there any Srivatsa Gotrakara here? Okay. Something unique about Srivatsa Gotram, you know what? There are 5 rishis. Pancha rishayehe pravaranvita. Whereas most Gotras come with 3 rishis. Pravaram in Sanskrit is alma mater. So if I have to join a college, you say that these 3 people graduated. So if you come, you will also graduate one day. So this is the alma mater that we talk about, Pravaram. So there's a Vedic introduction, after which I say what sutras or rules of which rishi I follow. In Yajurveda, most of the times, or the most heard of rishi is Apastamba. You rarely have this rishi called Bodhayana also. Bodhayana Sutram is also very important. Is there any Samavedi here? Okay. Samavedam is generally in minority. So and Rigvedam here? Okay. Rigvedam is a minority in minority. So in Samavedam you've got other sutras as well. Here Apastamba Maharshi, when he talks about Grihya Sutram, he tells that when you bring the boy and the girl together, in case of an arranged marriage, this is all in case, if at all there is this concept of arranged or assisted marriage happening in remotest parts of the world, then in such cases, when the parents are also equally involved in bringing the boy and the girl together, they will check on a variety of aspects. The boy should be educated, so should the girl. A lot of other things. But then, when every other permutation and combination is matches, for example, the girl likes the girl likes the boy's parents. The boy likes the girl and the boy likes the girl's parents. The girl's parents likes the boy's parents. There are so many combinations. When everything matches, then there is a bigger impediment, which is that of the horoscope. What if the horoscope doesn't match? North India में हम कुंडली बोलते हैं ना, अच्छा South India में हम जातकम कहते हैं. So most online websites will ask, you want North Indian horoscope or South Indian horoscope? So I say I want a West Indian horoscope. So whichever horoscope we want. So when we have the jatakam, we see if there are certain things that match. In case of arranged and assisted marriages, if children don't want to give any of this pain to their parents, they have another option as well. So, here, in certain cases, the 6th and the 8th houses of horoscopes will be filled with certain grahams. So, it's called Sashtashtakam. So, in Sashtashtakam, they will keep fighting every day. Now, even if you do not know if your horoscope has Sashtashtakam or not, you can see the consequence and derive whether your Jatakam was a Sashtashtakam. Now, if the Jatakam doesn't match, there are many marriages which come very close but get halted because of the horoscope. In such cases, Apastamba Maharshi suggests that in such cases, bring the boy and the prospect girl together. Bring a very, very elderly person who can read eye gestures. Check if the boy and the girl can communicate through their eye glances. If they can, and if they are communicating, do not worry about the horoscope. There is one sutram, Akshinitve is a sutram. So our rishis were as much modern as much as they were traditional. Most people may not want to bring such aspects of our rishis out, either because they may have not been taught, or second, in the last 50 to 70 years, we have also seen that Sanatana Dharma has reached the heights of commercialization. So, if you want to get rid of this agony, do this. That's not how our ancestors have lived. If you don't believe in the karma theory, then your existence itself is a big question. I am suffering only because of my doing, either in this birth or my previous birth. Unless and until I accept this reality, I can never lead a life of peace. If I keep asking this question, why me, and why not him or her, then we are nowhere getting to the P of philosophy. So probably in the last 70 years, we have gotten so much commercialized that the astrologers and people who research in astrology may not want to put the sutras of Apastamba out. But here, when Sita and Rama's eyes met, the point is their eyes met, so there was no need for them to research on their horoscopes. Annarum nokinan, avalum nokinal. Why do we need a Jatakam? Was a question. So the couplehood and the understanding between the two began at that stage. Well, Rama reaches the Sabha Mantapam of Janaka. In those days, most men, especially Kshatriyas, had to do a Virya Shulkam, had to prove their valor and then marry the girl. If that was the case today, most will remain bachelors. So, Rama looked at the bow, he lifted the bow. Sita was first surprised because most people didn't even reach this stage. So he lifted the bow, he had to string it. While he did so, unknowingly, the bow had actually had a crack before. It was kept as an antique piece. In most houses, even mortars are kept as antique piece. When you buy the idli batter, why do we need a mortar? So, this was a beautiful piece. So while this was kept, Rama lifted, and while he had to string it, it broke into a two. First, Rama had the apprehension. You are coming to somebody else's house and breaking some object. So he said, Janaka, whatever is the compensation, I'll pay for this. So Janaka said, this is insured. So you don't have to worry. I have people with me in the workshop who can get this repaired. But the best thing is you have to marry my daughter and leave. So even with a disciplined girl at home, he wanted to get rid of her. So imagine the plight of the parents today. So when we have boys and girls at home, parents are worried. We want to send them somewhere. So let the other person bear the pain. So, yam petta tumbam, vairagam pera. So, here Rama lifted, and that is when Sita came with a garland of fresh flowers to adorn Rama. That is when he said, Pitrivihi, let my father come and accept this marriage. So, Rama was so self-disciplined that he wanted his parents' consent at least in this incarnation, because the next incarnation, none of it happened with his parents' consent. The parents were kept in the dark about every marriage that he had in Krishna Avatar. No application was rejected. So, at least in Rama Avataram, let me accord due status and respect to my parents, was his thought. Well, Tyagaraja brings forth the love that Sita had for Rama, even in the Sabha Mantapam. So, she wanted to look at Rama because Rama was probably one of those pageant title holders, was like Mr. World those days. Long arms. See, in Tamil, the literal translation to long arms is alarming. Kai Neelam. Kai Neelam. அப்படின்னா அடிப்பர்னு So in Kshatriya parlance, Kai Neelam means the one who is capable enough to fight. So in those days there used to, it may seem as an exaggeration, when Kamban mentions about this demon called Kumbhakarna, he tells, Tolod tolnokka naalod naal shellum. For looking from this shoulder to that shoulder, it will take 1 week for Kumbhakarna. It was that broad, it seems. To just say that he was that strong, for me I just need a second. So I cannot be even taken as a Jawan for the village battle. So I'm that useless a creature. Here, Rama had long hands, long arms. Chandrakantananam Ramam Ativa Priyadarshanam Rupa Audarya Gunaihi Pumsam Drishtichittapaharinam, tells Valmiki. He had a moon-like countenance. He came in the solar dynasty. He had a moon-like countenance to just indicate to the opposite person that anything he speaks will be as cool and as nectarine as the moon. His habits were so very seasoned and cultured. We call it the finishing school today. So after your graduating school, you go to a finishing school. So even without a finishing school, after having graduated from Vasishtha's university, he knew how to speak and what to speak. Sudha Madhurya Bhashana Sudha Madhurya Bhashana Sudha Karanana Kathamruta Mujhe Bahu Kalamu Agalidi Yunannu Brobumu Sudha, tells Tyagaraja how beautifully he spoke. So he had a very good demeanor. He was rarely a person of beauty with brains. So he was so handsome enough. Sita fell in love with him. She wanted to have a glimpse of him. That is when Tyagaraja said she was a bit hesitant to look at him directly. So she wanted to create a situation where people would look at her while she would look at him. So she told her friends who were assembled around her that my bangles are just going to fall. While they were looking at her, she looked at him. And Tyagaraja says, I have looked at you. Kala kala manu mukha palu galigina Sita kulu kuchu oragalulanu juche ninnu kana kana ruchira kana kava sana ninu kana kana. So then they had this celestial, beautiful marriage between the husband and the wife. It was an economical marriage. Why? Because the other 3 brothers were also married in the same expense. So all the 4 couples marched to Ayodhya. Sita was now 6, Rama was 12. They lived happily in Ayodhya for another set of 12 years. We don't have much detail about what happened in that 12 years. They lived happily. Let's assume everything was fine. So now Rama was turning 25, Sita was 18. That is when we had this important character in Ramayana who came from Kekeya Desha. Kekeya, by historians, is believed to be the current day Afghanistan and parts of Pakistan. And the great sage of Kanchi called Paramacharya used to state that Kekeya is Russia. So in whichever case Kaikeyi belonged to Russia or Afghanistan, the concept of a foreign daughter-in-law ruling India has been in the vogue. So Kaikeyi was served by a maidservant. She was called Manthara. Manthara brainwashed Kaikeyi into asking 2 boons that she had left unasked in the past. So Kaikeyi, who was very affectionate towards Rama, but then it was at a very superficial level. So she was coaxed to ask, so she asked that her son Bharata should rule, while with the other boon Rama should go on an exile. Now comes the couplehood again. Rama immediately agreed. See, Ramayana, everything about Rama seems very idealistic to a reader. Whereas in Krishnavataram, he seems very realistic. Rama was so idealistic, if he were an Indian driver, he would put the right indicator and still show his arm. Whereas Krishna will still manage to go when there is a red light and go escape from the red light and wouldn't pay the penalty. So he was that realistic and Indian. So, Rama, he comes and informs his mother, Mate, Kaushalya, I have to go to the forest. She weeps, she tells, all these years I've been bearing the rebuke and the humiliation meted out to me by your father and by your aunt. Just for the reason that I will see you as the heir apparent one day. But today look at me, you're going to the forest, I'll come. He said, no, father has a lot of tablets that he has to take every night. Who will give you? You stay back. Wherever Dasharatha is, that is your place. You stay. Sita must have eavesdropped. Let's assume that she would have done that. He comes to the inner chamber of Sita and tells Sita, there's a change in the plan. It's not plan A, it's plan B. I'm going to the forest. Take care, love you. Let's stay in touch. Meet you after 14 years. Mwah, and he left. And Sita said, where are you leaving? He said, I'm going to the forest. There'll be many thorns there, Rama. Yes, Sita. I shall come with you and remove all those thorns in the path and make your path thorn-free, Sita. You just can't manage in the forest. You have lived a life of comforts. Why will you come with me? Akantakan. I'll make it thorn-free, she said. Then she says, I'll come with you. Rama says, there'll be wild animals. She says, when I have a warrior such as you with me, why should I fear the animals? So for every reason Rama tries to use that as an impediment, she tries to give a counter. At one point in time, this is where the couplehood comes, Dampatyam. Sita knows that unless and until she gives him a shock, this man is not going to relent. So she tells, Kim tvam anyada vaidehaha pita me mithiladipaha ramajamataram prapya striyam purusha vigraham. Fine, Rama, I'll stay back. Rama was surprised. All this while she was debating that she'll come. What made you change this? You're staying back? Yes. Rama, it is my father's grave mistake for having gotten me married to a woman who's in the disguise of a man like you. Striyam Purusha Vigraham. Rama, in the agricultural lands, to drive away birds that could hamper the crops, there is a doll which is placed. It's called the scarecrow. Miral Bommai. You are also one of those scarecrows because you're dressed like a man. You don't have the manliness in you to support a woman in your life. I used to wonder that you were very different from your father who had married many partners and you restricted to one, but today I realize that you just can't manage even one. Kim tvam anyada vaidehaha pita me mithiladipaha Rama jamataram prapya. Jamata in Sanskritam means son-in-law. So, in those days, out of humor, they used to say that Jamata dashamograha. The incoming son-in-law to the house is the 10th graham, because the Navagrahas trouble and the 10th one troubles more than the 9th. So, Jamata dashamograha. But she tells, you are not so troublesome to my father because you are first of all not a Jamata. You are a Snusha to my father. Snusha is daughter-in-law, not son-in-law. That is when Rama says, you come. Then Sita says, why did you have to hear all this for? You could have just said a yes before. But it is in Rama's karma. What can we do? So Sita is being taken. So the couplehood that they enjoyed was of sheer love and respect. But this rebuke also comes out of love. Incidentally, Netflix, one of the shows, I think the protagonist, I think Radhika Apte says, how can you shout at a person whom you don't love? You can only shout at a person whom you love, because if you shout at some Tom, Dick and Harry, he'll just move away. You can shout only at your mother and father because you know for the very fact that you love them, they love you, and how much ever you shout, they'll get back to you. So we always are very, very human, smart. we know where to shout. So Sita knew that her work will get done and the only way was to shout at him. And this wasn't even a shout, a rebuke. And this one word of Striyam Purusha Vigraham was enough that pierced the heart. Probably from that time onwards only we had this heart and one arrow. Because Rama was the best of archers. So you had the arrow. You don't use an axe, you don't use a knife, you use an arrow. It must have come from there. So let's assume that Rama was severely hurt. Thiruvalluvar tells, Teenal Shuttappun Bullarum Arare Navinal Shuttavadu. There are two kinds of wounds. One caused by physical disturbances through fire, through knife. So the scars that you see out of external or physical disturbances will disappear over a period of time. Say after 2 months you ask me, where did you fall? I say, I'm not sure, this hand or that hand. But when somebody wounds you verbally, you will never forget. You will even forget the content of this lecture. Right? The content of any philosophical lecture is comfortably meant to be forgotten. So people say, sir, when I listen to lectures like this, I'm able to appreciate, enjoy. But at one point in time, it just goes away from my mind. Why? Because we internally tell our brain, this is not important, don't remember. So the brain will not remember. The one way of learning is to learn. The other way of learning is to unlearn what we have learned wrongly. So unlearning itself is a learning process now. Here we had Rama with Sita who said, okay, let's go to the forest. You will be surprised, had they gone together, they would have had to toil for 14 years. Sita, though she had agreed to come to the forest, she didn't even realize that she had never done any of the household work, neither did Rama. That's when, while they were worried, their feet was caught by a person. They looked down. Tyagaraja mentions, Chitraratnamaya Seshatalpa Pandu Sita Patini Yuchi Juchi Mitri Bhagyame Bhagyamu Saumitri Bhagyame. Sumitra's son Lakshmana said, my dear sister-in-law, Bhabi kehte hain na? Anniya, Manniya? Manni. Anni, Manni. Kannadadavaru idara illi?
ಗೊತ್ತು ಹೇಳಿ
ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಏನ್ ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಿ? ಅತ್ತಿಗೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಅದು ಆಗ್ಬಿಡುತ್ತೆ. ಇಲ್ಲ, ಅಣ್ಣನ ವೈಫ್ ಅತ್ತಿಗೆನೇನಾ? Then what do I call my mother-in-law?
ಅದೆಲ್ಲ ಅವರು ಅತ್ತಿಗೆನೆ.
Okay, so Attige 2.0. Okay, 1.0 is the mother-in-law if she manages to live. So this is Attige number 2. Okay.
ಅತ್ತೆ ಅಂತಾರೆ ಅವರು.
Atte.
ಅತ್ತೆ ಅಂತಾರೆ, ಅವರು ಅತ್ತಿಗೆ ಅಂತಾರೆ.
Attige, okay. Atte, Attige. The difference in the sound and the suffix. Okay. Now, he looked at his sister-in-law and said, see, I'm not going to talk to my brother. I'll talk to Sita. Do you know to cook? She said, no. Do you know to wash utensils? Only if I know the first one will I know the second. So do you know to wash clothes? No. There's a machine that does that for me. Do you know to sweep and mop? Never have I done. Do you know to fold clothes? No. I will do all this for you. Sita turned to Rama and said, don't leave this man. Ask him to come along. Agratah prayayau Ramaha Sita madhye sumadhyama prishtatastu dhanushpanihi Lakshmanaha anujagamaha, tells Valmiki. So all three of them went. Now we may be wondering, why did this man have to spoil the privacy of the husband and the wife? He never sat there to be a spectator. He was always in the household work. So he was just like a robo. So his presence or absence wouldn't make much of a difference because Sita and Rama still enjoyed their stay of 13 years in the forest. Now the couplehood was all fine. But you always understand a person's mentality only when there is time or of distress or agony, right? Friend in need is a friend indeed. We have learned all these morals. So when everything is fine, you wouldn't know the other person's significance. Only when you have some agony will you really sense, oh, the words of my mother is so soothing to me. How much I am blessed. So only when there is distress. So this is when the second form of distress came. The first form came from Kekeya. That was a foreign country. Now it came from South, Lanka. And that was Shurpanakha. Shurpanakha means the one who has got nails that are overgrown as the winnowing fans. You know what winnowing is? In agricultural lands, when they separate the husk from the grain, the husk still remains along with the grain. So they'll keep a moram, a basket-like thing, and then they will start throwing it down. It will come as a parabolic curve. The husk being light will fly away from the grain. That is a winnowing process. And the one that helps you is called the winnowing fan. It is generally like this.
Yeah.
So when the lady's or the man's nail grows like the winnowing fan, that lady is referred to as a Shurpanakha. Nakam. Shurpanakam. Now, she was a widowed sister to Ravana, and the one who incidentally made her the widow, who killed her husband, was Ravana. So she came in search of her other brothers who were stationed in a place called Janasthana, which is the current day Nagpur. So while she managed to be there, she sensed the presence of a human in the forest. We may ask, how can you smell? See, we humans are endowed with a certain sensory pulse. For example, in the South Indian tradition, you make something called as Shakara Pongal. In the Iyengar slang, it is called Akkara Vadishal. So you will have to grind the cardamom, then edible, consumable camphor, it's called Pachakarpuram, and Jadika. And then when you let the jaggery boil, it has to come in a certain method. And then you mix rice and milk along with it. जैसे खीर बनाते हैं वैसा बनाएंगे. So you don't even have to tell a well-informed guest what you're making. So we are endowed with the smell. Except if the nose is blocked, otherwise we are endowed with it. And when you sharpen those senses is when you acquire some proficiency in that. How do we sharpen? For example, we have to meditate. Meditation helps a lot in controlling senses as well as sharpening senses. Your senses will get sharpened, but you still know how to control them. Because through meditation, for example, if somebody is cooking, in a normal meditation spree, अभी मैं ध्यान कर रहा हूँ. So ध्यान होता है along with the smelling. But Krishna talks about Ashtanga Yoga in Bhagavad Gita, which is Yamam, Niyamam, Asanam, Pranayamam, Pratyaharam, Dharana, Dhyanam, Samadhi. When you see the last 4 phases of Ashtanga Yoga, you should start withdrawing the work done by the external senses, which is the Jnanendriyam, and then concentrate. Even if I make samosas next to you or a kachori next to you, I should not be able to smell. That is true meditation. This is what Krishna talks about. It may seem very theoretical and non-happenable, but we have had hordes of rishis in Bharatadesham in the past who have done that and achieved that. Because without achieving that, you cannot see what is beyond the obvious. You can see what is obvious only when you do simple meditation. I see the light here. You're able to see that light, you're a great rishi. Nobody will say, because I'm seeing what is obvious. But if I'm able to see the antaratma of that light, then I'm a rishi because I'm seeing beyond the obvious. So it is only through sheer meditation and practice that it comes. And the beauty is, the person who talks about it has never got it. Because the moment you realize, you will never want to speak.
That's right.
So we keep speaking, we keep listening. We are still at a very, very elementary level of dhyana. We are nowhere close even to the D of dhyana. So Shurpanakha could sense, because she was the daughter of a great rishi called as Pulastya, daughter of a rishi called Vishravas. She came in the clan of Pulastya. Her half-brother was Kubera. So we had this very famous shloka when we do Harati, right? What is it? Rajadi Rajaya Pradahya Sahine Namo Vayam Vaishravanaya. Vaishravana means son of Vishravas, which is the rishi. So she had the ability. Now, she sensed Rama sitting in meditation outside the hermitage, very close to Janasthana, near Nashik, today Nashik. So she was enamored by his beauty. She went and proposed. Rama said, see, I am already married. I'm already married. She said, a lot more can happen over a cup of coffee. She proposed. Rama said, I'm already married. She said, I don't have a problem. Rama said, I have a problem. Then Rama thought she is irreversible, incorrigible, irreparable. So, see, I am dark. Look at my color. I am dark. You go and propose to my brother. He's washing utensils there. Prill ke saath jo dho raha hai. Idhar kya milta hai? Malum nahi. There'll be something. Oh, what is the washing liquid in there? Sauce. Why is it not here? Something to wash. You go and propose to him. He's fair and lovely. So she goes and tells all that she has told Rama to Lakshmana. Lakshmana tells, see, I'm already washing utensils in their house. If you marry me, you will get your fair share of washing. So while they were playing shuttle with her, she sent Sita come, and then she understood, with this lady in mind, this man will never want to leave her and marry me. She is a personification of beauty. Sita Nama Vararoha. Sasukeshi Sunasoruhu. She has got beautiful hair locks. Everything about her is beautiful. There is Saundaryam and Lavanyam, individual beauty and overall beauty. This is again a place where we can sense the couplehood. While Rama was married to Sita, there is a beautiful introduction given. Imau kumarau bhadram te devatulya parakramau gajasimhagati virau shardula vrishabhopamau padmapatra visalakshau. So this is how he is described by Vishwamitra. Vishwamitra tells, hey Janaka, this is Rama. He is Dasharatha's son. But Dasharatha is the namesake father. The real father who has nurtured and brought this culture into Rama is his teacher called Vasishtha. Is this the way you will introduce someone? Sir, this is Suresh. That is Suresh's father. Father for namesake. That man who's seated there is Suresh's other father. They're causing some confusion in the legitimacy of the child. So what he meant was, Janaka, you don't have to have apprehensions because he is Dasharatha's son, because Dasharatha was married many times. The father will have a doubt. If the son also follow the father's trade, then he'll also end up having multiple partners. So he says he's Dasharatha's son for namesake, naam ke vaste. But the real father is Vasishtha. Vasishtha is Ekapatni Vrata, so he will imbibe only that characteristic. So here, the couplehood is seen. While this happens, then comes another place where we have to understand the understanding between the husband and the wife. See, that's Dampatyam. This lady, Shurpanaka, after she was humiliated by Lakshmana, she goes and complains at the court of her brothers who were stationed in Janasthana. Khara Dushyanth Sridhar. Virada Harinasha Dula Viludita Bahupala Maka Kalama Rajanisara Mriga Mrigayaramba Sambhrita Chira Britanuroda Trishira Shirastritaya Timira Nirasa Vasarakara Dushana Jalanidhi Soshana Toshita Rishigana Goshita Vijaya Goshana Karatara Karataru Kandana Chandapavana Visapta Rakshas Sahasra Nalavana Vilolana Mahakalabha Asahaya Shura Ganapaya Sahasa tells Vedanta Deshika and Raghuvira Gadyam. So she went and complained to her brothers. The brothers who were frustrated looking at the bleeding sister said, we will avenge this. It's the era of avengers. So these brothers march with an army, a retinue of 14,000, and they reach this place to fight Rama. So they come as a group of 14,000, and there are only two people here, Rama and Lakshmana. Rama tells Lakshmana, you take Sita atop the hill, and from the cave of that hill you watch what is going to happen. It's like those corporate boxes in the IPL matches. So Virat tells Anushka, see, I'm out of the game. It's something very similar. So Lakshmana escorts Sita to the cave, and from there they can have a glimpse of what is happening in the war field. The rishis In the forest, they were a bit worried. Ekascha Ramo Dharmatma Katham Yuddham Bhavishyati. On one side is Rama, one. On the other side are demons, 14,000. So there's one here, 14,000 there. The other side we have Rama who sticks to rules. Here are Rakshasas who don't know what is the meaning of the word rule. Here we have Rama who will fight during the day. Kamalapatrakshaha. He's got lotus-like eyes. Lotus blooms in the morning, closes in the evening. We have Kamalapatrakshaha Rama here. On the other side, we have demons who are nocturnal in nature, who will fight in the night. One in the day, one in the night. One here, one 14,000. Here, stickler to the rules, there is no rules here. What is going to happen? Ekascha Ramo Dharmatma Katham Yuddham Bhavishyati. While Lakshmana and Sita were also equally stressed about how Rama is going to manage the 14,000 march, leaving a storm of dust in the air. While I used to study in Pilani, Rajasthan and the northern parts of India is very famous for the loo winds called Andhi. So it was like Andhi and these people were marching. While Rama fixed the arrow and started shooting, it seemed as if 14,000 Ramas were fighting, because the gap between him taking the arrow from the quiver, placing it on the bow and then shooting was very minimal. See, I'm sure Telugu చెప్తారా? ఆ కాలంలో ఎన్టీ రామారావు వస్తుంది. ఎన్టీ రామారావు మూవీలో N.T. Ramarao will be Rama. For a very long time in Andhra, they thought N.T. Ramarao was Rama. So they had to differentiate. There is a separate person called Rama. N.T. Ramarao is just acting. Now, we had Ranga Rao who used to stand as Ravana on the other side. On the battlefield, Rama is about to shoot the arrow. In yesterday's Telugu movies, he will start singing. Oh, Ravana meeku idi kavala. So, in a battle such as this, you won't have people standing so close, and suddenly in the VFX that we had in the olden movies, you have sparks of fire coming like standard fireworks, sparklers. Nothing of this used to happen. So it used to be so swift. And Rama was one capable warrior whom even Arjuna looks up to. Arjuna was called Sabyasachi. He could shoot from both hands. He was ambidextrous in that aspect. In the east of India, they make Vakaram, Bakaram. Khadi boli Hindi mein Vidya becomes Vidya, Chakravarti becomes Chakraborti, Vangam becomes Bangam, Vrindavanam becomes Vrindavanam. Likewise, Sabyasachi becomes Sabyasachi. I don't know whether he shoots arrows, but he stitches clothes today in India. So, Rama could shoot. And in one instance, Sita was surprised how he is able to capably manage all the 14,000. After 1.5 muhurtas time, he could vanquish all the 13,999 demons of the Lord and spared one. And that too because that person had to wrap himself with a sari, thinking it to be a woman out of love and mercy and respect. He did not kill that demon called Akampana. Now the 13,999 demons were killed. On the other hand, Rama played a very realistic war, and Valmiki reports it that way. So he too had bruises and blood gushing out of the wounds. So a dark body, red blood coming, it was a sheer contrast. So Rama turned from the battlefield towards the cave where Sita was stationed. He looks at Sita and shows his body, and Sita looks. Lakshmana is confused. Why is he doing this? It's seeable, right? Why is she looking? The moment he turned and she saw, and he saw that she saw, she starts running cliff after cliff, goes down and hugs him. This embrace, Valmiki brings out in a verse. Tam drishtva shatru hantaram maharishinam sukhavaham babhuva hrishta vaidehi bhartaram parishasvaje. This is the verse. Tam Drishtva. The commentary to this verse in Sanskrit by Tilaka, by Govindaraja, goes for 40 pages for this one verse. How much of meaning has been embedded in it? Tam. For the word, it can be treated as a letter, but as well as a word. Tam Drishtva, after having seen. Who has seen Sita? After having seen Rama. Tam Drishtva, Shatru Hantaram, the one who has vanquished his enemies. Maharishinam Sukhavaham, the one who has brought cheer and happiness to the rishis. Babhuva Hrishta Vaidehi. Not Sita, Vaidehi. Vaidehi means the one who still has a connection to her motherland, Videha. So, Babhuva Hrishta Vaidehi, Bhartaram, she came closer to her husband. Parisha Swaje, she embraced him nicely. This is the meaning. Why? Because when they had to leave to the forest, she said, Striyam Purusha Vigraham. You are a woman in the disguise of a man. And we call him Purushottama. Looking at a Purushottama, she tells this. So it would have hurt Rama very badly. I have to prove this to her. But when you prove, you don't have to keep telling. See, one day you waiting, then all. So, there certain things have to be communicated through gestures and body language. See, when we look at generally when any public speaker looks at the audience, they look at the audience's reaction, right? So, in few lectures, Avikaraya, Shuddhaya, Nitya, they won't move. So, it means either everything has been understood or nothing, which is OHT in BITS parlance. It's called overhead transmission. So, then you crack some jokes and bring some humor to make situation light. In most Vedanta lectures, when I have to give a talk on Ishavasya Upanishad, the things like that, people will be confused. What am I ordained for? Is this karma? And things like that. And in certain cases, you see people, maybe 15 minutes before the entire duration, they'll say, you go slowly, then I will come out. So then you look at that person, but you still have to act as if you haven't seen them. That's how the speaker's job is, right? So a lot of things go into gestures. You don't have to say. See, the best of the movies, and when you see the best of the directors, you see very little dialogues. Maniratnam is one such. Yenne? Eppo? Whereas in most dramas or plays, you will come across this line. Ninga, aathukku varelnu solrela. Phone ipo vekka porenu solrela. Adha vekka porare. Apra enna solradhu. So, here Sita doesn't have to tell Rama that prove unto me. Or Rama doesn't have to say, I will prove. He just stands there and see how I have vanquished or done a task which is treated impossible. One man fighting 14,000 demons at one go and emerging victorious is not possible. And you still call me Striyam Purusha Vigraham? All this was implied through his one glance. And Sita was telling, see, I wanted to come with you. So I resorted to rebuking or humiliating you, but I never meant. For that, why did you have to take all this effort to cause bruises to yourself? She wanted to tell this. So her eyes communicated that, it seems. See, while reading Puranas and especially Itihasas, we should not just read the lines. Then we are missing something. We have to read between the lines. See, when Devavrata, the son of Ganga, for the sake of his father Shantanu tells, from today onwards I will be a brahmachari. For the sake of my father, Adhyame, from today I will be brahmachari. What is the implication? Asks the commentator. Till then he was not a brahmachari.
Yeah.
He was a grihastha. So that is why he tells, I'll be a brahmachari from. No sir, that is the slip of the tongue, sir. By mistake, Vyasa will never do mistakes. Right? So, she comes and hugs. Now, when she embraces Rama, the commentator asks, why did she have to embrace? Because she is regarded as the personification or incarnation of Mahalakshmi. And as per Shastra, Mahalakshmi is the embodiment of Ayurvedic herbs. Santanakarani and Vishalyakarani, which is meant like first aid. So when she embraces, she will ensure that it soothes the bruises on him. She embraced him so beautifully and with so much of love, it seems Rama would have felt, the commentator says, I should have got more bruises. She would have embraced me even more. So this is the couplehood that existed between them. So right from the marriage, till they met, till they were married, post-marriage and in their forest, everything seemed so beautiful. So, but when we listen to the couplehood of Rama and Sita, come two important questions. Forget the good ones. Why did Rama have to ask Sita to undergo the test of fire? If he is a husband who trusts in his partner, he should have not asked. One, how could he send his pregnant wife to the forest? Isn't it abandonment? Isn't it an act of a person who's trying to humiliate his wife and then trying to post to the world that I'm Purushottama? How can he be called Maryada Purushottam when he has done this? Answer those questions, sir. Why do you have to take only the romantic scenes of Ramayana? Well, if you remember, I had set a context that when both of them left to the forest, Lakshmana volunteered to serve them. It was no compulsion on Lakshmana. He could have sat back. Had I been in Lakshmana's place, I would have had the best of times. Rama, I really pity you. Wherever you go, let's stay in touch. Here, come where the network is. Keep the WhatsApp on. Let's be on Instagram. Let's tweet. Okay? Love ya, moi, and I would have sent him. Right? But here, Lakshmana volunteered. People immediately will come and ask her, everything you spoke was nice. Very nice. But what about Urmila? See, when Urmila herself is not worried, we should not be worried about Urmila. She will fight her own case. She doesn't need a spokesperson or an advocate. The only thing is we try to be, or we want to pose that we are slightly more intelligent than Valmiki. Most of the times it's never the case. So let's keep our emotions under a certain limit and let's assume everything was fine with her even without her husband being with her for 14 years. She was happy. Why do we have to disturb her privacy? Now, in the forest, 13 years Lakshmana served them day and night. The day Maricha comes as a gem-studded golden deer and tries to lure Sita, Rama runs behind the deer to fetch the deer for her. And this demon, wanting to be very grateful and faithful to Ravana, mimics in the voice of Rama, Ha Sita! Ha Lakshmana! So Sita thinks that Rama is in distress. So she tells, Lakshmana, you go to your brother's rescue. He tells, Mata, you've lived with him for over 27 years, 20, 24, 25 years. Do you think he can relent so easily? He will yield so easily? It's not him. There's some prank played on us. I shall remain to protect you. She should have either disagreed or agreed with him. But what she says is very alarming in 4 verses in Aranyakanda. Lakshmana, I suspect all these years you were waiting when your brother will move out of the house so that you have a relationship with me. You were waiting for that instance where your brother will be out so that you can begin a relationship with me. Lakshmana sweats and is petrified for a moment. He says, Mata, if I continue standing in this place despite you rebuking me like this, then it will prove that what you're saying is right. So, Vanadevataha, let the forest deities protect you. Mata, I will leave this place. I don't know when I'm going to meet you next. Forgive me, Mata. I can't stay here anymore. I've served you like a son. And you're calling me a person who's a traitor. I can't stand here anymore, Mata. Let the forest deities protect you. This call was heard by Jatai. So in Ramayana, in Valmiki Ramayana, in Raghuvamsham of Kalidasa, in Raghuvira Gadyam of Vedanta Deshika, in Kamba Ramayanam we have a slightly different version. In the Moola Ramayana, we don't have this concept of Lakshman Rekha. In India, it is incidentally used to drive away Periplaneta Americana. What is Periplaneta Americana? Cockroach. So to drive away cockroaches, we use Lakshman Rekha. So there is no Lakshman Rekha, Bachchan's Rekha anywhere in Ramayana. So he said, and when Ravana comes, he comes as a Ravanananda, as a sannyasi, and abducts her. He holds her by the thigh and the other by her braid of hair. So it's very clear, there was no sudden fire that will come from that line, VFX, animation, nothing. He abducted her and took her away. Simple. Valmiki tries to get as realistic as possible. If we want to create an animated movie out of it, it's in our hands. Now Sita had to see this separation, one, because of Ravana, second, because she had hurt someone who was very, very loyal to her. When you do something that is unjustified, you will have to bear something that is unbearable. She repents for this in Sundarakanda. That is why when Hanuman comes, she inquires about Rama and Lakshmana, but she doesn't ask how is Rama, how is Lakshmana. She tells Rama Anujam, Lakshmana Purvajam cha. How is the younger brother to Rama and how is the elder brother to Lakshmana? Will you inquire like this? How is Rama and how is Lakshmana? Ivarda Rajagopaludi appava. Swami, enakku no per kedayada. So Ramanujam Lakshmana Purvajam cha. How are the two? Because she repents is what Valmiki tells. But the couplehood that you see between the two is visible from another important character who sees it. Very important character, who's a super monkey called Hanuman. Hanuman, he was a celibate, one of the only monkeys who chose not to marry. He was not in Facebook, so he had no friends. So he has never seen Sita before. So he was completely a single student. It was a private tuition. Surya Bhagavan was his teacher. So only students. So it was not even co-ed. No girls there. So he had no friends on the social media. So he did not know how a human lady will look first of all. He has seen only Tara and Ruma, who are monkeys. So for him, when Rama said you have to go in search of my wife, first of all he didn't give a profile picture. He said she will look like a woman. See, that's not the best identification that you can give. So Hanuman did not want to question. He said, fine, I'll search. That is why there were many instances where he mistook the other woman to be Sita. He looked at Mandodari, Aspotayama, Sachuchumba Pucham, Nananda Chikrida Jagao Jagama, Stambhana Roham, Nipapada Bhumo, Nidarshayam Swam, Prakritim Kapinam, tells Valmiki. He looks at Mandodari and thinks this must be Sita. Then he thinks, why will Rama's wife be sleeping happily next to Ravana on this bed? Because she was sleeping on a very king-size bed. Valmiki Ramayana describes the dimensions of the bed. Majestic bed. I didn't realize this until I went to North America for lectures. Because most beds in North America, you need a ladder to get on it. The bed will be somewhere high. You're halfway to heaven. And if at all you tumble down from the bed, you will reach heaven. So it's that high. So here, Hanuman, when he goes jumping tree after tree, he reaches the top of a tree called Simshupa Vriksham. He looks down, that's where he sees Sita and concludes logically, Tarkayamasa Siteti. Through logic he concludes this must be Sita. Why? That's where there's a beautiful verse. Tulya Sheela Vayovrittam Tulya Abhijana Lakshanam Raghavor Hati Vaidehim Tanchayam Asidekshana. He has seen Rama before and now he's seeing Sita. So he checks if both of them are really a good match, though you can't do much about it now, whether they are a good match. Tulya Sheela. When you see the demeanor of both the people, they are calm and composed. So they are meant to be a good husband and wife. Vayo, their age, though there could be a slight difference, they seem like a couple. The man and the woman are walking. Namaste, is this your daughter, sir? No, she's my wife. It should not be that way, right? Startlingly seeable. Tulya Sheela Vayo Vrittam. The likes and dislikes. We today use words like the chemistry should match. Physics, econometrics. But what is this chemistry match? I keep wondering. If the other person has to be simply identical as the other person, then you're trying to create a clone in your relationship. You have to be different. But what our ancestors have seen is the ability to accept the differences. I'm different from the other person. She has her own likes and dislikes. I respect that. As long as it doesn't cause a huge harm to the family and the society, one's likes could be different. But when, to some extent, when the likes and dislikes are matching, relationship becomes slightly easier because you don't have to take that extra effort to compromise. For example, the wife is super interested in classical Carnatic music. husband knows not an iota of it. She pulls him to a concert in Copenhagen. There's a concert. Those of you who have attended a Carnatic concert, you will come across a lot of compositions. Hindustani concert just has more to dwell with ragams. Whereas in the south, you give on ragam, talam, as well as the sahityam, which is the composition. So there is a certain technical portion in Carnatic music which is called Neraval. Have you heard of Neraval? So a certain line, important line from the composition is taken for elaboration. There is a beautiful kriti in Purvi Kalyani. Meenakshi me mudam dehi. So, Meenakshi me mudam dehi me chakagi rajama tangi madhuraga puri nilaye mani valaye malaya dhvaja pandya rajatanaye vidu vidambana vadane vimale veena vadana dasha gamaka kriye veena vadana dasha gamaka kriye veena vadana dasha gamaka kriye Dashagamaka kriye veena vadana dashagamaka kriye veena. If you keep listening to this, it may seem to a non-Carnatic person that the person has forgotten the next line when you keep repeating the same line. So that's when the husband may ask the wife, what is he up to? Can we help him with the lyrics? So when likes don't match, this is the climax that you have to see. Whereas when you look at Rama and Sita, Hanuman felt that their likes and dislikes also match. Tulya Sheela Vayo Vrittam, Tulya Abhijana Lakshanam. Looking at them, I can sense that they come from very illustrious backgrounds. See, in arranged marriages, that was one of the primary criteria to see. This is Suresh, the prospect boy. That is Suresh's father. That is Suresh's grandfather. What is special about Suresh's grandfather? Suresh's grandfather has published Ramayana edition 5. Suresh's father has published Bhagavatam. What has Suresh done? Nothing. But you can still get your daughter married to Suresh. So you look at the family. Vyasam. Who's Vyasa? Vasishtha Naptaram. Vasishtha's great-grandson. Shakte's Pautram, grandson of Shakti. Parashara Atmajam, Parashara's son. Shuka Tata, father to Shuka. Besides that, Vyasa had significance of his own. So Hanuman felt everything in Rama and Sita matches. But what? There's one place where it doesn't match, he felt. Tulya Sheela Vayo Vrittam Tulya Abhijana Lakshanam Raghavorhati Vaidehim. It is for Raghava, for Rama the Sita, for the Sita the Rama. Tanchayam Asidekshana. Except those beautiful eyes of Sita, which you can't see in Rama. Because Rama's eyes could match the beauty of Sita, but Sita's eyes ooze with mercy, whereas Rama's eyes ooze with violence and mercy. So you won't know that's a colloid in colloid. Liquid in liquid is generally non-separable. If you mix milk and water, how will you separate? So if violence and mercy is mixed together, you won't know how to separate the two streams. So Rama's eyesight could be a bit dangerous, whereas Sita's eyes are filled with karuna. Chandram, Chandra Sahodarim, Chaturbhujam, Chandra Rupam, Indiram, Indu Sheetalam. Ahlaja Jananin Pushtim Shivam Shivakarim Satim, tells the shloka. So while you see the couplehood, it is just not Rama matching Sita or Sita matching Rama. Sita was much better than Rama in a certain aspect. Yet, while the Yuddham was over, Rama tells Vibhishana, go ask Sita to get decked in silk garments and ornaments and ask her to come here. While the monkeys the monkeys were clueless, they were fighting for Sita, but they have never seen Sita. So they were saying to each other, see, now we are going to see Sita, Operation Sita, we have done till now, we don't know who it is Sita. They were looking. So the demons, everybody were looking at Sita. Sita came and Rama said, you seem to be well adorned. You put on weight. Probably you like the stay in Lanka, you like the luxury and the comforts that Ravana has given. Stay here. See, it's my duty, Sita, that as a person who's married you, I have to protect you. I came and rescued you because I was duty bound. I have done my duty. You stay here. The monkeys were confused. What is this man? Bipolar disorder. Suddenly he says, I can't live without Sita. Now he says, stay back. Something wrong. Why should we have come all the way from India? We told our wives it's on-site project. And we came here. Why did we have to come? So that is when. See, Sita at the age of 18, when she left Ayodhya, she said, Striyam Purusha Vigraham. At the age of 18, she told, you're a woman who's dressed as a man. She could have had the audacity to tell Rama, if you are speaking so low, I don't need to stay with a person like you. It's not that she was in destitution or her father was powerless. She said, what should I do? To prove that I was always thinking about you. Rama said, see, people jump into water or fire, you do whatever you want. So the only other person whom she knew besides Rama was Lakshmana, very well. Otherwise, most of them were monkeys and demons, just acquaintances. So the other person besides Rama whom she knew very well was Lakshmana. So he was the only person to whom she could go and approach and ask for fire. You can not ask Rama. See, suppose the judge is telling you have to pay 50,000 fine. And I go say, sir, abhi mere paas nahi hai. आप मेरे लिए एक लोन दे दीजिए 50,000. मैं भर देता हूँ. महीना 5,000 rupees and pay. Okay. You cannot ask for loan from the judge who has given you the judgment. So she cannot go and ask Rama to light the fire. So the only person whom she can go and ask is Lakshmana. The moment she did this, Lakshmana felt very, very embarrassed. His mother is coming and asking for fire. That is when he looked at Rama. Rama, what is this? He didn't say this. The eyes were enough. Rama said, Kannil Kurina tells Kamban. You lied. Because even if it is my dearest wife Sita who throws an unproved allegation against you, Lakshmana, of character maligning, I should throw that back at her. Then only she will realize that what kind of a mistake she has committed to a person who volunteered and served us selflessly as a son for years together. She shouldn't have done that. Even if she was at the height of depression and stress, she cannot say words like this. And if I forgive her, Lakshmana, people will say, see, had anybody else rebuked or humiliated Lakshmana, Rama would have punished them. It is Sita, all in the family. So he's trying to keep it under wraps. In Tamil Nadu, it is called Chidambara Rahasya, where the father protects the son. So, this should not be the case. So even if it is my wife, she should be made felt the taste of the medicine that she has given the other person. So I will throw the same allegation of character maligning at her. Whom did she throw at, Lakshmana? She threw it at you. So now I am making her go ask for fire to you. So the moment she got into fire, see, Sita could have opposed this if she found Rama's claim unjustified. She is a very strong woman. People say, poor Sita, Mata Sita ke liye aisa nahi hota hai. No, she doesn't need any spokesperson. She can become advocates for us. She is a strong woman. We don't have to put a piteous mold around her. She is a strong woman. She can defend herself. So, trying to be a good human being or a good man doesn't mean creating unrequired and irrelevant benevolence where it is not required. So she got into fire, and then came another person escorting her who said, give me Bernal. He was fire god. He said, her chastity has burnt me. So both of them got happily. Then Rama said, Sita, how are you? Fine. They got together. Now looking at these people, how dare Rama see the wife and the husband have a no problem? We shouldn't have a problem. They have got together. Why should we become unnecessary? We want some separation there. Seeta, you throw in case let your attorney talk. How under Act 34F and 49B, he has exploited you. Do it. We don't have to teach Seeta all this. She is an attorney herself. Now comes a follow-up question, which is, sir, everything was fine now, right? They reached Ayodhya. Rama was 39 years of age. Sita was 33 years of age. 2 years they ruled well. Rama was 41, she was 35. She got pregnant. In Uttarakandam is essentially an integral part of Ramayana written by Valmiki. People have doubts on it. It is completely an integral part, which the commentators state. Now there, after 2 years of his regime, she is pregnant. She expresses her desire. She tells Rama, though we are now kings and we are in the aristocracy now, my children who will be born in the months to come should grow up in an environment that teaches them humility along with knowledge. Knowledge can come from any quarter, but humility comes from only one quarter, which is through love. Humility cannot come otherwise. So how to teach them humility, Rama? My children should grow up in an atmosphere where we all were nurtured, which is hermitages of rishis. We all were in the forest. Those rishis and rishi patnis showered love on us. My children should grow there. I don't know whether it will happen or not. Rama said, fine, if God willing, it will happen. In Bhavabhuti's Uttara Rama Charitram, there is a detailed shloka where Sita expresses this desire. That night, apparently, Ramayana talks about one of the spies called Bhadra, who comes and informs about a hearsay where a certain person was talking about Sita being languished in somebody else's kingdom, somebody else's land for months together, and Rama having accepted her. In Skanda Puranam, they say specifically the person was a washerman. But in Ramayana, there is no specificity about that. Nevertheless, when Rama hears it, he says, I have already asked her to do Agni Pariksha, which could be a test of fire for these people. But why do they keep throwing this at me? But then he feels, as a king, if I don't take action on this, then it could question my loyalty to the regime and to the Rajya. So he feels, even without court-martialing or even without asking for justification from Sita's side, he should send her to the forest. At this point in time, we need to understand, even if the Almighty, if we believe that Rama is Almighty, we could still treat him as a character. There is no coaxing in Sanatana Dharma that you will be killed if you don't treat Rama as God. You could still treat him as a normal human being. Normal human being or Almighty, which comes as a human being. In either case, the natural quality of a human being is to commit errors. We are prone to commit errors. Only when the enormity and the intensity of the errors magnify is when the law takes its course. Otherwise, we commit errors every day, every minute. I have wanted to complete the lecture in 2 hours. I've just got 3 minutes left, so I have to extend it by another 4 minutes. So there is an error of time management. Correct? So I may have wanted to present 10 points in the back of my mind, but when I finish the lecture, I will think, oh, I just presented 6, I forgot to present the 4. Any work, the more we try to be perfect in our life, we will see imperfection there. It doesn't mean we shouldn't aspire for perfection, but what we should realize is imperfection will be the final result. We want to create a Microsoft Word document with everything, good English and everything. Suddenly, it will create lines. F-A-V-O-U-R, it will underline. I keep thinking, no, the Britishers taught me that way. It's not F-A-V-O-U-R as per US English. It's F-A-V-O-R. So the U is cut. So correct English is corrected to incorrect English. So incorrect English becomes the norm of writing. So were, was, suddenly it will underline and say use were here, was here. But Wren and Martin, two great Prapannajana Santana Kutasthas of Sharanagati, have told us that were and was is generally used. Was is generally used for singular. He was coming, they were coming. But when you see a communion of objects, then you have to see the word that comes before the common noun. There's one rule in Wren and Martin. But then Microsoft Word doesn't accept that. So what do? So the more we aspire for perfection, we see imperfection in our life. We want to do some food well, but we may realize everything was done well, but there was no salt in it. So Rama, despite being treated as a normal human being, a monarch or the Almighty's incarnation, when he comes as a human being, he is prone to commit errors. One such largely agreed upon error is when he tried to meet this treatment to Sita, not that Agni Pariksha. Agni Pariksha was a valid one, but here he should have asked Sita to come and seek her point of view. But he thought Rajya Dharmam was more important than Kutumba Dharmam. For him that sought precedence. See, when you have 5 functions like inverse, logarithmic, algebraic, trigonometric and exponential, though they may seem equal in the eyes of mathematics, here we have a rule called ILATE. So you have to keep inverse first and exponential at the end. So you also see prominence there. Primary witness is given more importance than secondary witness. Perceptional evidence is seen more important than literary evidence in the court of law. Likewise, he thought Rajya Dharmam is more important than Kutumba Dharmam. Fans and fanatics about Rama may say what he did was right. But if you are an unbiased person, you may feel that Rama should have given equal chance to Sita to explain as a king. He didn't do that. So that is why our Acharyas, out of love and dedication for the both, indicate this. They say, before Dasharatha, who ruled Ayodhya? Dasharatha's father. Yeah, who's Yama's wife? Mrs. Yama. Dasharatha's father was Aja Maharaja. Aja Putranam, Aja Pautram. You have this Mangala Churnika. Kinchita Dhatarunyam, Nadajanaiga Karunyam, Vidalita Mahesha Chapam, Mukasura. Vidita Pratapam, Bhanukulatnadipam. You've got a beautiful Churnika that comes as an invitation. The invitation between Rama and Sita. Aja's son was Dasharatha. So Aja ruled. After Aja, Dasharatha ruled. After Dasharatha, who ruled? Bharata ruled. Huh? Huh? Dasharath ke baad Ram. Agreed? How many years it took? 14 years for Rama. Who ruled in that 14 years? Paduka. So in the 14 years of Paduka regime, Vedanta Deshika says there was not even a single scandal or scam of a woman being meted with bad judgment. Whereas when Rama ruled, there is one case. So when Rama's sandals ruled, there was no scam. But when Rama ruled, there is a scam. To indicate that when the Lord comes and reigns, he could commit errors, but when the Lord's devotees do that, they won't be errors. Aham bhakta paradina. So Sita was sent to the forest. She was oblivious of the fact that she was being excommunicated or made a pariah. So Lakshmana escorted her and brought her close to the banks of river Tamasa, on whose banks was staying a rishi called Valmiki. Incidentally, the person who has compiled Ramayana. Valmiki, we have a past to him in Skanda Purana, which talks about him being a dacoit, hunter and all that. Nevertheless, when he meditated, there is said to have been a termite hill built over him. And over a period of time, when rains poured, the anthill got dispersed and he emerged there out of effulgence. So since he meditated within an anthill, the anthill in Sanskritam is called Valmikam. Since he emerged from Valmikam, he is called Valmiki. In Vedam, it is said, Vedopa Brahmana Kutuhalina Nibaddham Vishwambhara Shruti Bhaveda Maharshinayat. So this Valmikam, which comes in Ramayana, is treated in Vedam as the ears of Mother Earth. Personify Mother Earth. And she has to hear. Correct? So how will she hear? Through her ears. So the anthills on her are the ears, tells Vedam. So Valmikam is the ear of Mother Earth. Till now you have understood? Now, I'll give you another parlance. When Ganga follows Bhagirath Maharaja, she destroys the hermitage of a rishi called Janhu, who thinks that he has to teach her a lesson. He absorbs her completely, and upon Bhagiratha's request, he lets her through the ear. Since she emerges out of the year of Janhu, she is called Janhavi. Gange ma pahi girisha shire sthite gambhira gaye sangeeta vadya priye angajata tamude asivaruna madhye akrura pujite Akhila Jananande Sakala Tirthamule Sadguru Halile Vara Janhu Bale. She is the daughter of Janhu because she has come from the year of Janhu. So from whichever opening you come, you are regarded as a son or daughter. So Janhavi is the daughter to Janhu. So Valmiki came out of the Valmikam, which is the year of Mother Earth. So he is regarded as the son of Mother Earth. Regarding. Now, she was abandoned on the banks of river Tamasa. Rama told very clearly, Lakshmana, you drop her close to Tamasa Nadi. He knew Valmiki's ashramam was there. So, when Valmiki heard her story, he escorted her to his hermitage. Because she is not the biological daughter of Janaka, she is the adopted daughter of Janaka. She was found on earth. So, Sita is called as a daughter of Mother Earth. Bhumi Janayakam Muktidayakam Namakitanakaragam Naravaragadamayikam Ramachandram Bhavayami Raghukula Tilakam Upendram Bhumi Ja. I said Ja indicates birth. Ja, when you add it as a suffix to the previous word, it indicates daughter. Bhumi Ja, daughter to Bhumi. The other synonym for Bhumi is Avani. Have you heard of Avani? Avene is also a brand for hair presser in Germany. I don't know how they pronounce this. Is Avani. Ravi Sashi Kuja Buddha Guru Shukra Shanishchara Rahu Ketu Netaram Rajakumaram Ramam Pavana Japtam Avanija Manoharam Bhajare. Avanija, Sita, Avani, Bhumi's daughter. The other word for Avani or Bhumi, earth, is Kshiti. Kshitija Ramanam Chintaye. Kshitija, Bhumija, Avanija indicates daughter of Mother Earth, who is Sita. Who is the son of Mother Earth? Then what is the relationship between them? When a lady is pregnant, where will she go for delivery? Mother's place or brother's place? So she went to her brother's place. So, then later she had Lava and Kusha who were accepted by Rama. But even then, though they became kings, you find, if you go to the city palace of Udaipur, you still find artifacts which suggest that these idols were worshipped by Lava and Kusha. So that is why Rajputs, many Rajputs in Rajasthan and parts of Madhya Pradesh, of the Kshatriya clan essentially, their Gotram is Raghuvamsha Gotram. We say Kashyapa Gotram, Shrivatsa Gotram, Bharadvaja Gotram, right? Raghuvamsha Gotram. You know who is the family deity of all of them? Huh? Very good. Ranganatha. Today, a lot of people, Rajputs in Rajasthan, will come to Srirangam in Tamil Nadu to worship Ranganatha because the family deity of Rama called Ranganatha was there in Ayodhya until he handed over that to Vibhishana while going to the south. So this Lord whom we see in Srirangam, Sri Ranganatha, Rangaji, he was there in Ayodhya. Raghukula Raghava Aradhitam. Raghukula Raghava Aradhitam. He was there. Sensing some problem in Ayodhya, even then itself he shifted base. So he shifted his capital. So for them it is Raghu. So Lava and Kusha were made the kings. But incidentally, the point that Rama should have sought Sita's opinion to respect his better half is very pertinent in Ramayana. Despite this, they enjoyed a beautiful couplehood. What we need to understand is, in the current parlance, we say it was a male-dominated society before. Yes, it was a male-dominated. What is the opposite of male domination? Somebody says female domination. No. For male domination, the opposite is balance. Male or female domination is on one side, the other opposite is balance. Each of them should respect each other. So India traditionally, at least in scriptures and Shastram, has given equal importance to women. But due to invasions, intrusions, colonization and various other aspects, and due to the gender mentality of one gender, it could have suffered a lot of female snubbing, succumbing to pressure and humiliation. But nevertheless, the fact remains that Ramayana gives us and presents the world a beautiful couple called Rama and Seeta, whose dampatya is of course a lesson to learn. Learnings could be of positive and negatives. It doesn't have to be positive alone. So this beautiful couplehood between the two is the culminating topic of my lecture in this European tour of 10 days, where I've traveled to Frankfurt, Brussels, Antwerp, Luxembourg, Geneva, Basel, and here. So, special thanks to all of you present here, because you may be distant from a country where the scriptures were born or where you were born, but you have still made time to come on a Sunday evening. So, first accolades for this interest or inclination that you show towards culture, because music concert, vocal, instrumental, they will bring more people because you don't have to concentrate in them. See, if a person wow, but they'll still do what's that. See, you can still do a 2-in-1, right? You can listen and do something else, because that is just being a background music to you. Nobody is going to get to the Nadam of Behag Raga and seek salvation through it. You're all seated here for entertainment, but here it becomes infotainment. So you have to keep concentrating, and concentration is the toughest thing in Kali Yuga.
Yes.
Right, attention span, if you look at my YouTube channel, we get statistics from YouTube as to what is the average retention time. It was 3 years before, it was 15 minutes, 23 seconds. Now it has gone to 17 minutes, 2 minutes it is increased. So beyond 17 minutes, it means on an average, nobody is ready to listen to anything. But here you have sat for 127 minutes, which is 20 minutes longer than the 6th and the 7th movie of Harry Potter. 17 minutes lesser than Bahubali 2. And there you had Anushka, a hunky and a nerdy Prabhas, but here you have a not so parkable and lookable person on stage. And yet without having something which is a visual treat, you've still made it a point to sit here, because you've found that the content is something that we all have to cherish. So the content comes from all our Maharishis who never had a copyright and were so selfless to give it to us. So thanks to all of you. Special thanks to the family of Sri Krishna Varahan, his brother, his wife, his children and his mother. Because organizing a lecture in a distant place is of course a challenge. And he has been living in Geneva. Those of you who may not know him, he lived in Geneva for 12 years. And then he shifted base here. And I was just presenting my lecture in Geneva, a huge community. But when I look at Denmark, we have a huge community, and it's very important that we stay in touch through cultural discussions as this. Of course, there's Bollywood music, Hollywood music, and then party, and then food, and grub, and everything. That's all important to keep the culture and the society intact. But what is very important to a Sanatana Dharma based civilization which doesn't believe that the other person could be lured by money or fear is only through intellectual discussions. So it's very, very important that you all create a Sanatana Dharma association, stay together. You don't need a temple, you just need discussions. That's very, very important. You could have plenty of questions, you could still not believe in Sanatana Dharma, that's the beauty. You could be an atheist, but still be a part of Sanatana Dharma. Jambali, the minister, was an atheist. This is how Amartya Sen begins his argumentative Indian with. So, it's very important you all stay in touch. And thanks to all of you, the video, the audio, the mic, and the person who's taking care of the audio console at the end. And to 3 children here who have managed to keep it Sundarakandam and not Kishkindakandam. So, So kudos, and I should thank God for bestowing them with that quintessential knowledge.
ப்ளீஸ் தமிழில் கொஞ்சம் பேசுங்களேன்.
இப்போவா பேசிடுறேன் இன்னும் 5 நிமிஷத்துல. And special thanks to Sri Krishna Varahan again, because he was the one who coordinated my entire Europe tour. So special thanks to him, and again special thanks to you all. Now I'll give the Mangala Shlokam conclusion, and then we'll go have a very brief question answer session just for 5-10 minutes, and then we leave. When I answer, I will mix Tamil, because a lot yaarkalla Tamil, how many of you can't understand Tamil? You can understand, yeah. Oh, okay.
Very understand.
Yeah. So I will speak in English as well as mix Tamil for the benefit of those people who love Tamil, and that's my mother tongue as well. So Kavita Arkika Simhaya Kalyana Gunashalini Srimate Venkateshaya Vedanta Gurave Namaha Swasti Prajabhyah Paripalayantam Nyayena Margena Mahishaha Gobrahmanebhyah Shubhamastu Nityam Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu Kayena Vacha Manasa Indriyairva Buddhyatmana va Prakriti Swabhavat Karomi Sakalam Parasme Sriman Narayana Yeti Samarpayami.